at the midst of the path through life, I found myself lost in a wood so dark, the way ahead was blotted out. I'm not speaking of myself. You know what it is, what I'm reading from? This is the beginning of the Divine Comedy of the Inferno, written 7 centuries ago by our neighbor Dante Alighieri, who lived 120 yards from here before he was exiled. I'm using the recent translation by Clive James. I hope in the midst of this MOOC you don't feel lost in the dark wood of the many categories of politics, and I hope that the way ahead is clearly indicated by the syllabus, which you find in the materials accompanying this video. And this way will lead us first to the international, then to the global affairs, and will also prepare us for the concluding 4th part of the MOOC. So we are now talking about in this lecture, about two very fundamental concepts, which are war and peace. War means, but let us restart from something we are already familiar with, the notion of sovereignty. You know already was internal or domestic. Sovereignty is something that has no limitation except by law. For example, we in Europe have abolished the death penalty, not because some superior power imposed it upon us to abolish the death penalty, but because we are convinced that it is a good and just thing to abolish the death penalty. In this sense, the member states of the European Union accepted a self-limitation of their sovereignty. External sovereignty means independence from other countries, independent from superior bodies, except if a form or a measure of dependence is constitutionally authorized, such as the limited dependence of the European member states from Brussels, or the duties that most of the existing states recognize with regard to their membership in the United Nations. You can also think of external sovereignty in terms of autonomy or self-rule. On these conceptual grounds, a whole history developed and still develops, primarily or originally the history of the European states system. System is a specific notion and means a interaction among states without a superior or neutral power regulating the common affairs and the controversies. This leads to the regime called international anarchy, or by Thomas Hobbes, state of nature, in which you can try to solve your controversies in any possible peaceful way, but if you don't succeed, you still have the chance to resort to the factual and legal chance to resort to war as the ultimate way to solve a dispute. And this seems, and also was the case, and also for the whole modern history, and also explains why the notion of sovereignty has been seen as a justification for aggression or for an irrational waging of war. We are going to see that this is not the whole truth, because sovereignty also means reciprocal recognition among the state, a formalized recognition, which makes room for two very important features, specifically modern features of international politics. One is the law of peoples, the Jus Gentium, or international law, which developed through the work of important jurists, of which I am just mentioning Hugo de Groot, a Dutch jurist and philosopher of law, better known as Hugo Grotius, 1725. De Juri Belli ac Pacis, the law of war and peace. Grotius believes that there is a national law that creates ties, legal ties among nations, and 120 years later, the Swiss Emmerich Vattel. The other invention of modernity is diplomacy, as an established permanent system of relations among states. The great show of diplomacy was the concert, of course, was the Congress of Vienna, which put an end, re-regulated Europe after the French Revolution and Napoleon, and gave birth to the so-called concert of nations that lasted more or less until World War I, and also made room for the development, the establishment of governmental and international governmental and non-governmental organizations, which a reality which is well known also to our contemporaries. What is the outcome of all this? This is what we are going to see in the next video.